Rust never sleeps, and neither does the gravity pulling on a 50-year-old suspension cable. My name is Lester Czarnecki. I'm 58 years old, and for the last 36 of them, I've been the guy who keeps Pennsylvania's bridges from falling down. Today, that job ended. Winston Blake Ashmore didn't look up when I entered his office. His focus was on the screen of his laptop, a sleek silver thing that looked more like a prop than a tool. The office was all glass and white walls, smelling faintly of lemon cleaner and expensive cologne. His Princeton MBA was framed in black wood, hanging at a perfect right angle to a piece of abstract art that looked like a blue smudge. He was 28. He had hands that had never held anything heavier than a latte. He wore a crisp Armani suit, the kind that wrinkles if you look at it too hard. On his feet were suede boots, a ridiculous choice for a man supposedly in charge of heavy infrastructure. Lester, he said, the name sounding foreign in his mouth. He still didn't look at me. He was reading from a script on his screen. As you know, we are entering a new era of digital transformation and synergy. I stood there in my work-worn Carhartt jacket and steel-toed boots, the ones with concrete dust permanently embedded in the seams. I said nothing. We're realigning our operational assets for maximum optimization, he continued, a string of meaningless words. As part of this paradigm shift, we've determined that certain legacy roles have become redundant. Legacy. That was me. Redundant. He finally lifted his eyes. They were clear, blue, and completely empty of understanding. Your position, Chief Bridge Inspector, is being eliminated. The new AI-driven drone inspection protocols are more efficient. I thought about the Monongahela Southern Span. I thought about the hairline fracture I found in a truss cord back in 2007. A fracture no camera could have seen. One I only found because I felt a wrong vibration through the soles of my boots. A drone wouldn't feel that. Your time here is over, Les, he said, his tone shifting from rehearsed corporate drone to petty tyrant. He enjoyed this. Your institutional knowledge is appreciated, but we need people who are agile. A piece of paper slid across the polished white desk toward me. A severance agreement. 20 minutes to clear out my locker. My keycard was already deactivated. A dead calm settled over me. It wasn't shock. It was clarity. I understand, I said. My voice was even. The door is right there, he said, gesturing with a flick of his manicured hand. I didn't look at the paper. I turned and walked out of the sterile, white box he called an office. As the door clicked shut behind me, I thought about Federal Highway Administration Mandate 23, Section 4, Paragraph C. I thought about the 47 bridges in this state built with a specific 2-pin hanger plate suspension system, and I thought about the single, solitary name on the PennDOT registry certified to inspect them. My name. They thought firing me was the end of the story. They were about to learn it was just the beginning. If you love stories about underdogs who refuse to stay down and the sweet justice that comes when experience meets arrogance, hit that like button and subscribe right now. You won't want to miss how this plays out. I didn't go to my locker. There was nothing in there but an old thermos and a spare pair of gloves. Everything that mattered, everything I had built over 36 years, wasn't in that building. It was in my head, and in the glove box of my 1991 Ford E350 van. The van smelled of stale coffee, oil, and wet concrete. It was a smell I associated with honest work. I put the key in the ignition, and the old diesel engine rumbled to life, a familiar, comforting sound. I pulled out of the pristine asphalt lot of the new PennDOT headquarters, a glass palace I never felt at home in. Winston Blake Ashmore was the third turnaround expert they'd brought in. The first two were gone within a year, chased off by the sheer, unyielding reality of physics and decay. They couldn't optimize gravity. They couldn't synergize metal fatigue. Winston was different. He had the backing of a few state senators who bought into his talk of lean government and public-private partnerships. He was the son of a major party donor. Nepotism with an Ivy League veneer. The breaking point came in February 2020. I knew for sure 3 weeks ago, during a budget meeting. He put up a slide with a picture of a sleek white drone. "This is the future," he announced. "Automated structural analysis. We can inspect every bridge in the Commonwealth in a quarter of the time for 10% of the cost. We cut the dead weight." He didn't look at me when he said it, but everyone else in the room did. Dead weight. After 36 years. After spending more nights on a cold steel catwalk under a bridge than in my own bed. My daughter's college tuition, my son's wedding, the mortgage on a house I was rarely in, all paid for by being that dead weight. I drove west on the turnpike, away from the city. I wasn't heading home. Not yet. There was something I had to check. Something I hadn't looked at in years. Back in 1994, I had a mentor, an old engineer named Frank Kowalski. Frank had seen it all. He'd worked on the original construction of the Girard Point Bridge. He had slide rules in his desk and blueprints that were actual blueprints, smelling of ammonia. One afternoon, he called me into his cramped, dusty office. He tossed a thick bound document onto his desk. "FHWA Bulletin 42C, he grunted. "Read it." It was a report on the Mianus River Bridge collapse in Connecticut. A pin and hanger assembly had failed. 100 feet of roadway had dropped into the river below. 3 people died. The feds, as they always do after a disaster, created a new rule. "Any bridge with that design," Frank said, tapping a diagram in the report, "now requires a level 4 pin and hanger specialist to sign off on the 5-year deep inspection. Not a regular inspector. Not an engineer. A specialist. There's a whole new certification." "How many of those do we have?" I asked. Frank laughed, a dry, rattling sound. "In the whole country? Maybe 100. In Pennsylvania? 0. He pointed a thick, nicotine-stained finger at me. "You're going to be the first, and for as long as you can, you're going to be the only one." "Why?" "Insurance, kid," he said, leaning back. "One day, some hotshot kid with a fancy degree is going to walk in here and tell you he can do your job with a calculator. He's going to call you a dinosaur. And on that day, this piece of paper is going to be the most important thing in the whole damn Department of Transportation." He was right. I took the courses. I flew to a facility in Colorado for the practical exam. It involved rappelling off a training structure and using ultrasonic equipment to detect microfractures in load-bearing pins. It was difficult, expensive, and obscure. No one else wanted to do it. For 25 years, I was the only certified pin and hanger specialist on the PennDOT roster. The certification was my secret weapon, tucked away in a filing cabinet, a fact so deeply embedded in the bureaucracy that no one who mattered remembered it was there. Until now. I pulled into a rest stop and took out my old, battered briefcase. Underneath a stack of inspection manuals and a high-visibility vest, there it was. A manila envelope, yellowed with age. Inside was my original certificate, and more importantly, a printout from the FHWA database, dated last week. It listed every pin and hanger bridge in Pennsylvania. 47 of them. And at the bottom, under Authorized Inspector, was one name. Lester Czarnecki. Status, active. Winston Blake Ashmore, in his infinite data-driven wisdom, had not just fired a legacy employee. He had just rendered the inspection certificates for 47 bridges, null and void. And according to federal law, an uncertified bridge is an unsafe bridge. An unsafe bridge must be closed. I looked at the list. The Commodore Barry Bridge, the Betsy Ross, the Fort Duquesne Bridge in Pittsburgh. These weren't country road overpasses. These were major commercial arteries, carrying hundreds of thousands of vehicles a day. Closing one would be a nightmare. Closing 47 would be an act of economic self-immolation. A slow smile spread across my face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the grim, satisfied smile of a man who had just seen the board and understood the checkmate was 5 moves away. Winston had the authority, but I had the control. I started the van and pulled back onto the highway. I drove home. My wife, Mary, met me at the door. She saw my face and knew immediately. She'd been telling me to retire for 5 years. "They finally did it?" she asked, her voice soft. "They did," I said, stepping inside. For the first time in my adult life, I had nowhere to be the next morning. The feeling was unnerving, but also liberating. "What are you going to do?" she asked, taking my jacket. "I'm going to my nephew's wedding on Saturday," I said, "and I'm going to turn my phone off." That same evening, back at PennDOT headquarters, Winston was holding a small, impromptu celebration in his office with his 2 young deputies. They were drinking sparkling water from expensive bottles. "A new chapter," Winston declared, raising his bottle. "No more gatekeepers of the old guard. From now on, data drives our decisions." His deputy, a young woman who always looked nervous, cleared her throat. "Winston, I was just looking at the forward schedule." Czarnecki was slated for the 5-year deep dive on the Allegheny River crossing next week. "That's a P&H bridge." Winston waved a dismissive hand. "Reschedule it. Let the drone team handle it. It'll be a good test case for the new system." "I don't think the drone is certified for that," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "There's a specific federal mandate." "Legacy regulations," Winston snapped. "Bureaucratic sludge. We're moving past that. Find a workaround. Get a waiver. I don't care. Just get it done. We need to show progress." He saw her hesitation and his eyes hardened. "Are you not agile enough for this team?" She shrank back. "No. Of course. I'll handle it." She spent the next 2 hours digging through the FHWA database and PennDOT's own legal archives. The workaround didn't exist. The waiver process took a minimum of 180 days and required an act of Congress. The deeper she dug, the colder the pit in her stomach grew. She found the list of 47 bridges. She found the single authorized name. Around 9 p.m., she knocked on the door of PennDOT's chief counsel, a man named David Chen. He was a 30-year veteran of state government, a man who had seen dozens of hotshots like Winston come and go. She laid the documents on his desk. "We have a problem," she said. David Chen put on his reading glasses and scanned the papers. He was silent for a long time. He took his glasses off and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Where's Czarnecki?" he asked. "Winston terminated his employment this afternoon," she said. Chen stared at her. "Winston did what?" "He said he was dead weight." Chen let out a long, slow breath. He picked up his phone and dialed Winston. "Winston, it's David. We need to talk. Now." 2 days before the humiliation, I was in my garage, working on my 1969 Mustang. It was a project I'd been tinkering with for a decade, a few hours here and there between emergency callouts. Now, I had all the time in the world. The smell of gasoline and metal was a welcome change from the perpetual dampness of a bridge underbelly. My phone was off, sitting on the kitchen counter. Mary had fielded a few calls. The first was from my old deputy, sounding frantic. The second was from the HR department, officially requesting an exit interview. The third was from David Chen, the chief counsel. Mary politely told them all I was unavailable. They didn't get it yet. They still thought this was a personnel issue, something that could be smoothed over with paperwork and a slightly better severance package. They hadn't grasped the scale of the disaster they had created. The collapse began on Friday morning. The first domino was a junior inspector on the Girard Point Bridge. He was running a standard check when his instruments detected a resonance variance in Hanger Cable 7B. It was the kind of thing that was probably nothing, but could be the first sign of catastrophic failure. The protocol was clear. Immediately consult the chief inspector. If he's unavailable, consult the certified P&H specialist. He radioed it in. The dispatcher, a woman I'd known for 20 years, told him I was no longer with the department. "Okay," the inspector said, confused. Patch me through to the specialist on duty, then. There was a long pause. Stand by, the dispatcher said. Minutes turned into an hour. The junior inspector, following procedure, halted all further work and cordoned off the section. He wasn't certified to make a judgment call. Up in the control center, panic was beginning to simmer. They had no one to send. They had no one who could legally clear the bridge. The call went up the chain to Winston Blake Ashmore. What do you mean you can't clear it? He demanded over the phone. Send another engineer. Sir, no one else is certified, the shift supervisor explained, his voice tight with stress. Federal law. We can't touch it without a level 4 specialist signing off. Then get one, Winston shouted. We had one, the supervisor said, his voice dropping. You fired him on Wednesday. Silence. By noon, the situation had escalated. David Chin had convened an emergency meeting with the Secretary of Transportation. The list of 47 bridges lay on the conference table like a death sentence. As of this moment, Chen said, his face grim, we are out of compliance on 47 critical infrastructure assets. Legally, we are required to notify the FHWA and begin lane restrictions, if not full closures, on every single one of them until a certified inspection can be completed. The secretary, a political appointee named Henderson, went pale. Closures? David, the Fort Duquesne and the Betsy Ross are on this list. That's not just traffic. That's commerce. That's millions of dollars a day. The governor will have my head. The governor will have all our heads, Chen corrected him. Winston, he said, turning to the young man who was now sweating through his expensive Tom Ford suit. You did this. You will fix it. Get Zarnecki back. Now. Whatever it takes. Winston retreated to his office, his arrogance finally cracking. He tried my number. It went straight to voicemail. He called my home. Mary answered. This is Winston Blake Ashmore, he said, his voice strained with forced politeness. I need to speak with Lester urgently. I'm sorry, Mary said, her voice like sweet ice. He's preparing for his nephew's wedding tomorrow. He's not to be disturbed. And she hung up. He stared at the phone in disbelief. He was losing control. He, the man with the Princeton MBA, the man who was supposed to optimize the system, had just broken it. He probably tweeted about it. Or whatever they do now. The breaking point came around 3 p.m. The legal department, having no other choice, sent the official notification to the Federal Highway Administration. The response was swift and brutal. An automated directive was issued. All 47 bridges were to be considered unsafe pending inspection. The state of Pennsylvania had 24 hours to present a remediation plan or face a complete cutoff of federal highway funds. We're talking billions of dollars. That's when the governor's office called. Saturday was a beautiful day for a wedding. Clear sky, a light breeze. The ceremony was at an old country club, the kind with rolling green lawns and ancient oak trees. I was wearing my only good suit, a classic Brooks Brothers I'd had for 20 years. I felt a decade younger. For the first time, I was fully present with my family, not thinking about corrosion reports or load calculations. During the reception, as the band played and my nephew danced with his new bride, my brother-in-law tapped me on the shoulder. Les, there's a man here to see you. Says he's from the governor's office. I turned. Standing awkwardly by the gift table was a man in a rumpled suit, looking profoundly out of place. He was clutching a phone to his ear, his face etched with panic. I walked over, holding a glass of bourbon. Can I help you? He looked relieved. Lester Zarnecki, I'm Alan Burke, Deputy Chief of Staff for the Governor. He was practically vibrating with anxiety. Sir, we have a situation of the gravest magnitude. I'm at a wedding, I said calmly, taking a sip of my drink. Sir, I understand, but... He lowered his voice. Secretary Henderson is on the phone. The governor is with him. They need to speak with you. He held out the phone. I took it. "Czarnecki!" a voice barked. It was Henderson. He sounded like a man watching his career burn down around him. "We have a problem." "So I hear," I said. "Listen," he said, trying to sound authoritative and failing miserably. "We need you back. There's been a misunderstanding, a clerical error." "It wasn't a clerical error," I said, my voice cold and clear. "It was a termination, executed by Mr. Winston Blake Ashmore. He said I was dead weight." There was a muffled sound on the other end, Henderson covering the phone to speak to someone. Then a new voice came on the line. Smoother, more polished, more desperate. "Mr. Czarnecki, this is Governor Thompson. I want to personally apologize for this egregious oversight. We need your help." I swirled the bourbon in my glass, watching the amber liquid catch the light. I could hear the band starting to play a slow song. My wife was waving at me to join her on the dance floor. "I'm listening," I said. "We need you to start certifying those bridges. Tonight, if possible. We'll arrange a helicopter." "Whatever you need," the governor pleaded. "The economic impact of this, it's unthinkable." Here it was, the moment Frank Kowalski had predicted all those years ago. The moment when the man with the fancy degree and the big title had to come begging to the man with the grease under his fingernails. "I might be able to help," I said slowly. "But things have changed." "Anything," the governor said. "Name it." "First," I said, my voice steady and hard. "Winston Blake Ashmore is to be terminated, effective immediately. I want confirmation that he is cleaning out his desk first thing Monday morning, and I want him escorted from the building by security." A pause. "Done," the governor said without hesitation. "Second, the position he held, Department Director for Infrastructure, is now mine. The title, the office, the authority. All of it." Another longer pause. I could hear muffled, frantic whispering. "The salary for that position is $280,000 a year," I added, plucking a number out of the air that was more than double my old pay. "Plus a full review of pension benefits, retroactive to my original date of hire." "That's highly irregular?" Henderson stammered in the background. "Shut up, Bob," the governor hissed. Then, to me, "Agreed." "Third," I continued, pressing the advantage, "this can't be some quiet backroom deal. On Monday evening, you will hold a press conference. You will announce my appointment. You will talk about the importance of experience and dedication. You will thank me for my service and for stepping in to avert a crisis. And you will shake my hand for the cameras on the 6 o'clock news." This was the kill shot. It wasn't about the money or the title. It was about respect. It was about making sure every single person who saw me as dead weight would see me being honored by the most powerful man in the state. The silence on the other end of the line was profound. I could picture the scene. The governor, the transportation secretary, a room full of panicked aides, all held hostage by a 58-year-old bridge inspector at a wedding reception. "Mr. Czarnecki," the governor finally said, his voice strained. "You drive a hard bargain." "Russ never sleeps," I said, "and neither does gravity. Those bridges are under stress every second of every day. The clock is ticking, Governor. Do we have a deal?" "We have a deal," he said, the words tasting like ash. "When can you start?" "I will finish my drink," I said. "I will dance with my wife. I will have a piece of cake. A state car can pick me up in 2 hours. I'll need my van. The tools are in the van." I handed the phone back to his trembling aide. "Tell your boss it's handled," I said. I walked back to my wife, who was waiting by the dance floor. "What was that all about?" she asked. "I got a promotion," I said, taking her hand. And for the first time in a long time, we danced. 6 months later, I sat in the office that used to be Winston's. The abstract art was gone, replaced by a framed, large-scale blueprint of the Kinzua Bridge. The lemon scent was gone, replaced by the faint, pleasant smell of old paper and coffee. The Princeton MBA was gone. Winston's departure had been exactly as I'd specified. On Monday morning, security had met him at the door to his office. They watched as he packed his few personal belongings, a silver pen set, a picture of him on a sailboat, his precious diploma, into a small cardboard box. He tried to argue, to assert his authority. The guards just stared at him, unmoved. They walked him through the main lobby, past the same employees he had lorded over just days before. His Armani suit seemed to wilt under the weight of their silent stares. He didn't look agile. He just looked small. The press conference was a masterclass in political theater. The governor stood at a podium, flanked by flags, his face a mask of sober leadership. He spoke of challenges and the indispensable value of our veteran public servants. He announced my appointment as the new director, and when I stepped up to the podium, he shook my hand firmly, the cameras flashing. He looked me in the eye, a flicker of grudging respect in his gaze. He knew who was really in charge. My first act as director was not to go to my new corner office. It was to drive my old Ford E350 to the foot of the Commodore Barry Bridge. I put on my hard hat and my tool belt, and I walked out onto the catwalk. The wind was sharp, the air thick with the smell of the river and diesel fumes. It felt like coming home. I spent 4 hours under that bridge, checking every pin, every hanger, my hands running over the cold steel. Then I signed the certification, the first of 47. The crisis was officially ending. The enablers, the ones who had sat silently in the room when Winston fired me, were now my direct reports. They were a mix of terrified and obsequious. I didn't fire them. That would have been Winston's move. Instead, I gave them work. Real work. I sent them out to the field, away from their spreadsheets and their climate-controlled offices. I made them learn the names of the bridges they were responsible for. I made them understand that infrastructure wasn't an abstract concept on a PowerPoint slide. It was real, it was heavy, and it was unforgiving. My life changed. I was home for dinner every night at 6. I took Mary on a vacation to a place without a single major bridge. We bought a small cabin in the Poconos. The strain that had defined my relationship with my children, born from years of missed birthdays and holidays, sacrificed for emergency call-outs, began to heal. I was present. But the biggest change was the quiet satisfaction that settled deep in my bones. It wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration. The natural order of things had been reasserted. The world had been reminded that some things cannot be optimized. That experience is not a liability. That some assets don't show up on a spreadsheet. And that the man who knows how to fix the machine will always be more powerful than the man who just owns the instruction manual. Winston Blake Ashmore learned that lesson the hard way. I heard he took a job at his father's investment firm, managing portfolios. Something abstract. Something with no moving parts, no metal fatigue, no gravity. Something safe. Sometimes, late at night in my new, quiet office, I look at the blueprint of the Kinzua Bridge. It was a marvel of 19th century engineering, a spiderweb of iron trestles. In 2003, a tornado ripped through the valley and tore out its heart. The engineers who analyzed the wreckage discovered that the bolts holding it to its foundations had rusted through, a simple, fundamental failure. It's a reminder, a lesson written in twisted steel. You can have the grandest design, the most ambitious plan, but if you neglect the small, essential things, the bolts, the pins, the people who know where to look for the rust, it all comes crashing down. Control is in the contracts, not the title. Power is in the knowledge, not the corner office. They thought they were cutting dead weight. They didn't realize they were cutting their own lifeline. They had the authority, but I had the keys to the castle. I always did. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the story. Leave a comment below with your own story of experience trumping arrogance. And be sure to subscribe to the channel for more tales of sweet, methodical justice.